we're losing 100,000 people every year to the fentanyl crisis. It's the number one leading cause of death for 18 to 45-year-olds. And it's devastating communities. A debt trap builds slowly, but when it finally collapses, it happens very quickly. And today we have interest costs on this $35 trillion of debt that's bigger than our Defense Department budget. The federal government spending over $4 trillion. Now we're spending over $6 trillion. So we got to pull that back. But then we got to put a glide path over a much longer period of time to try to pull spending down. I unfortunately think that at some point over the next 2-3 years, this debt crisis is going to hit us really hard. We've got to start making good, sound financial decisions to get us out of this economic mess.
All right, folks, it's Tuesday, and we got some big news. Hunter Biden is guilty on 3 charges of lying on a federal firearms form. I didn't see this one coming. I just got to be honest with you. I'm going to admit it right now. There's me being vulnerable with you. I didn't think it was going to happen. This was the exact opposite of the Trump trial, right? I mean, think about it. Trump and the media, oh, he got a jury of his peers. Yeah, how many juries of your peers hate you like that? 95-5 in Manhattan. I got a lot of peers. Not all of them like me, but not all of them hate me. The way that a Manhattan jury probably didn't like Trump. This is the exact opposite in Hunter's case. He was in Delaware, in Wilmington. I mean, my goodness, I think half the courthouse, like people related to him. They said a good chunk of the jury had dealt with addiction. I mean, he couldn't have asked. This wasn't a jury of his peers. This was a jury of like a cheering section. So he had all the opposite advantages that Trump had. And boom, right? The other thing is, I mean, Trump, it was like Michael Cohen said this and it was connect the dots and people were talking about Russian nesting dolls and that's how you had to make the case. And we never actually even knew what the charge was. With Hunter, it was plain as day. And I'm going to break that down for you in a way just so you understand this, because I'm sure that everyone's going to be like, oh my gosh, you know, this just shows that the Department of Justice. No, just so we're clear. And I said this last night on the live stream if you didn't get a chance to join us. We shouldn't have been here. This is his own fault. He was giving the sweetest of sweetheart deals and he turned it down. This was all wrapped up in a pretty bow. He did not have to be here in court. He did not have to face these charges. He would have been expunged if he had just done the right thing. I mean, this is his own malfeasance. So I'll break down the case, but I just thought that the people of Delaware there was no way this was going to get, but none of the evidence was in dispute. And I got to give the jury some credit here. Now, I'm sure they'll appeal, but remember, the case against Hunter was predicated on this fact. His lawyer said, and I'll walk through the evidence in just a second, that, but he wasn't addicted at the day he signed the form. All right. Just stop and think about that for a second. If you have an addiction problem, unless it's dealt with, you're an addict. You don't get to say, I wasn't drinking today, therefore I'm not an alcoholic. That's what their case was, though. They're saying on the day he signed the form, he wasn't doing drugs. Well, okay, so you did them the day before. Even if that's true, don't give me a break. You're still a drug user. You're an active drug user. You're texting people. All right. I got a lot to get to on that. Plus, Eric Hovde of Wisconsin is here with us, and he is ripe to take over the seat from Tammy Baldwin. Okay? And I want to break down why that's important and why it's going to be helpful to Trump. More on Hunter in just a second. What I want to do first, though, is tell you about my friends at Bishop Gold Group. Now, guys, with the Biden economy, inflation, and everything that's happening, everybody's talking about gold, right? Even Costco is selling it. The question is, do you just want to go out and buy something from anyone that's a lot of money, or do you want to invest with people who know what they're talking about? I took my money, and let's just be straight with you. It was a decent chunk of change. I realized that I wanted to get in on this, and I wanted to diversify, and I realized that this is potentially a really good move long-term, both gold and silver. So I called my friends at Bishop Gold Group. I literally picked the phone and called 1-844-984-1616. I would recommend you go to bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean first. Why? because you actually get a free gift. And I'm cheap. So get the free gift if you're going to do it. Talk to them about your individual needs. What do you have? Where are you in life? Do you want to just diversify? Do you have an old 401k that you want to roll over, or an IRA? But I had that conversation with them. I made a decision to invest in gold and silver. They can answer all the questions. Who holds it? How do you get rid of it? How do you liquefy it? How long does it take to liquefy it? All those kind of interesting things, and what allocation of everything, they'll answer it all. bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean. But again, you're getting hit up from everywhere. I get it. I see it all the time, just like you. Radio, TV. Go to the people that I trusted with my money. That should tell you everything. When I had a decision to make, I trusted Bishop Gold Group. You should too. All right, now let's get back to Hunter. There's a really interesting thread that I want to pull up that kind of walks through the case. So if we can, let's just start with what happened, and I'll walk you through this piece by piece. So on October 12th, 2018, and this is a thread on Twitter that somebody else put together. I just think it explains the situation really well. So understand, not my words, theirs, but I don't see anything that is incorrect on this, so it's great. So it's October 12th, 2018, Hunter walked into StarQuest Shooters and Survival Supply, which is a federally licensed firearms dealer in Wilmington, Delaware, and answered no to question 11E on the ATF form 4473, a federal background check form, certifying that he was not doing drugs or addicted to a controlled substance such as cocaine. Again, we know this. There's the form. There's a picture of StarQuest Shooters and Survival Supply. Interesting name. I'll stop by the next time I'm in Wilmington. There's the form on your screen. Okay. None of that's in dispute. He went to that store. Oh, there it is inside. Look at all of the variety they have in there. Looks like a good place to go purchase a gun. If I'm ever looking for a gun in the greater Wilmington area, maybe I will check into StarQuest Shooters and Survival Supply. But none of this is disputable, right? Not by him, not by anybody. These are the facts. And so there's the form. And 11E asks very quickly, it asks very straightforwardly, are you addicted or using a controlled substance, such as cocaine? Well, he was. So that's a lie because he checks no. So let's keep going down this. By attesting no to the drug user addict question on the federal firearms form, Hunter Biden was then able to buy a Colt Cobra 38 special revolver. Okay. That's the 38 that he purchased. Interesting that he chose the revolver. I don't know, maybe because he couldn't load a 9mm. He had trouble with the clip. I don't know. But there it is. Again, none of that's in question. That's what he bought. That's the gun. I showed you the form. Let's keep going. Next piece of this. Hunter Biden also purchased 25 rounds of ammunition, 2 of which were missing when the gun was eventually recovered for the revolver, a speed loader, an accessory that enables reloading, and a semi-automatic air pistol. Okay. It's pretty much not for nothing, but I am intrigued. Where are those 2 rounds? Like, did he drop them? Why do you need a speed loader? Which is fascinating to me for a guy doesn't have a history of firearms. Like, why is he buying the speed loader? It's a pretty easy gun to load, right? You just put it through the barrel and click, 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 push them in. That's fascinating. I'm sure somebody told him it was a great deal. And so, he did that. Again, let's get back to the nut of this. None of this is in dispute. Okay, here's where it gets interesting. Hunter's ex-lover, Haley Biden, the widow of Hunter's late brother, Beau Biden, and whom he introduced to crack cocaine, found the gun inside Hunter's unlocked Ford Raptor truck while cleaning out his car on October 23rd, 2018, 11 days after the gun sale. Okay, so let's be clear. He buys the gun. He puts it in his truck unlocked for anybody to access. And Haley then sees the gun because she's cleaning his car. What perfect girlfriend that happened to be married to your brother that you're now dating, gosh, that's what you want, right? Someone who's going to do this. He's now got her hooked on coke, apparently, according to this thread. And then there's a series of text messages that we see here that detail the exchanges. Is she saying to him, hey, guess what? I found the gun and I threw it out and then I'm calling the cops. I'll show you that in a second. He's freaking out. What do you say? He says, call me, right there at that top one if you can't read it. Of course he is, because he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, I don't, considering your state in all of this, I don't think it's the best that you have an unlocked gun just hanging out. Anyway, let me just keep going down the thread here. Hallie Biden wrapped the gun in Hunter Biden's leather brown pouch and dumped it at Jansen's Market. Nice picture there of Jansen's Market for you there in the bottom left. The pouch right above it, right? Oh, yeah, there's Jansen. So after you buy your gun in Wilmington, if you're ever interested in getting, maybe a little something to go, swing by Jansen's. Maybe this is a nice little commercial we could work up for them. So anyway, she wraps the gun and then she dumps it. Okay, here we go. Hallie Biden wrapped the gun in Hunter Biden's thing. Dr. Jason Brewer, a forensic chemist serving as an expert witness for the prosecution, conducted an analysis on the off-white powder residue found on Hunter Biden's brown-colored pouch and found traces of cocaine. In late October 18, Hallie complained about another one of Hunter's pouches containing a stem, which apparently, I didn't know this. I learned something now. Is a crack pipe left at her home's library next to her son, also named Hunter. So he's clearly leaving drugs and guns in places that are not supposed to be. Okay. And then here's where it gets interesting to the next part of this thread. Here's the local grocery store, Jansen's, that we just saw. Surveillance footage of Hallie Biden discarding the gun. She used a gift bag to mask the appearance, tossing it into a trash can receptacle. So you can actually, she gets out of the car. She goes over to the trash can. Right? We can see this now. She's getting out. And then she just, grabs the gun. And what does any smart person do? They chuck it in a trash can at the top. All right. Then we go to the next slide here. Then comes this guy. This is the thread here. Then comes Edward Banner, an elderly dumpster diver rummaging through the shop's trash, searching for recyclables. The 80-year-old Navy veteran stumbled upon Hunter's gun because it's right at the top. Sorry, my words. Upon Hunter's gun and took the discovery home with him. He reportedly stashed the revolver in a rolled-up sock turned inside out in his General Motors lunchbox until a Delaware state lieutenant ultimately recovered it. And then lastly here is footage. Here's the last piece of this thread. Here's security footage of Hallie Biden returning to the store and frantically looking for the gun that's gone because she only tossed it on the top of a fire of a thing. All right. So again, those are the facts, none of which were in dispute. I just didn't think that the jury would find the guy guilty because they were going to be sympathetic to him. But again, lying on a form, and Democrats who seem to always talk about guns, I was surprised none of them spoke up about it because he shouldn't have had the gun. And this is what Democrats always talk about. Anyway, shocking to me, but this is where it's at. So we'll continue to break this thing down. Friday, we've got a really amazing professor from Yale that's going to break down the Trump case. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss this. Before we do that, though, I want to bring in Eric Hovde. He is the Senate nominee in Wisconsin that's taking on Tammy Baldwin. That's going to help President Trump get a Republican Senate that will help his nominees and his policies get through. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you about my friends at Tax Network USA. Trust me, guys, the IRS just got tens of billions of dollars from the Democrats in Washington, and they're sending out 5 million pay-up notices. What does that mean? If you owe taxes, 10 million, 10,000, whatever, or you didn't file your taxes because of the pandemic or whatever, they're coming for you. And when they come, trust me, they're coming with the full force of government. These guys aren't playing. This isn't a regular private sector job. They have nothing else to do but to ransack your life, to go through all of your documents and receipts, figure out how much you should have paid and make you pay up. So don't enter this alone. Call my friends at Tax Network USA. Make sure that you have all the resources that you need. These guys have recovered over $1 billion. $1 billion. If you go to tnusa.com, tnusa.com/Sean Spicer, or call 1-800-245-6000. They will take care of you. Do not talk to anyone from the IRS without talking to the people at Tax Network USA. Go to tnusa.com/Sean Spicer, or call 1-800-245-6000 to get the help and the support that you need from the best in the business. Okay. Eric Hovde, as I said, running for Wisconsin, successful businessman, successful in the real estate and in the banking industries. But he's taken on the issue of debt in a way that I haven't seen a candidate do. I want to show you this ad that he put out and then bring him in to discuss. Here we go.
Last year, our daughter blessed our family with this cute little nugget. We're supposed to leave our next generation better off. But because Washington politicians have spent our money recklessly, he starts out owing hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. It's wrong. The spending needs to stop. Unlike career politicians who drive us deeper into debt, I'll fight for him and for your children to have a better future. I'm Eric Hovde, and I approve this message.
Eric, great to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Great being on your show, Sean.
You bet. So you saw, obviously, I was about to say, you saw that ad. It's your ad. It's your grandson. Why? It's funny. We've had all these people on the show, right? A lot of the other candidates that are in high-profile Senate races. You have the national debt front and center. Why?
For a real simple purpose, it's probably the greatest risk to our country today. If you think of great empires, how do they collapse? They first collapse by a moral decay and losing their ethics and morality. Then they collapse economically. I don't care if it was the Roman Empire, the Dutch Empire, the British Empire. They erode themselves financially. And look, when an individual or a corporation rack up too much debt, or even a third world country, they have the option of bankruptcy and restructuring those debts and clearing them away and restarting. The U.S. government cannot do that. We have $35 trillion in debt. If we did that, would collapse the whole globe into a great financial depression that would last generations. So what is going to happen? They're going to print more and more money. And we've just seen the beginnings of inflation, the rise of prices of food, gas, everything. This is what countries have historically done. Think of Argentina, where inflation is rapid. Think of Germany post-World War I. So we're on this unsustainable path. We're creating inflation because what is inflation? It's always a monetary event. It's too much money chasing a fixed amounts of goods and services. So we are eroding the middle class, our working class, our elderly that live on fixed incomes, and we're ultimately damaging my children, your children, our grandchildren's future by leaving this burden on them. So I find it morally unconscionable what Washington has done, what this president has done in the last 3.5 years. We've added more debt in 3.5 years than our country's first 230-year history. And it's just unbelievable. So that's why I did it, because it ties in to the biggest issue that's affecting Americans today, which is inflation, and it's the greatest risk our country has.
Yeah, frankly, it's a breath of fresh air to me. It's something that I wish more candidates would focus on, because, if you're a liberal, you want to control debt and deficit because it's crowding out other spending. If you're a conservative, obviously you care about this as well. Let me ask you this. First, do you think there's an appetite beyond you? Because as I said, I'm glad to see you do it. I'm excited that you are championing this issue. I just don't see it among even other Republicans.
Yeah, let's be honest, Sean. Both parties have played a role in this.
Right.
Democrats are just even more egregious. But most politicians are big appropriators, and they think just spending more and more money. And that's one of the fundamental problems. We have a lack of economic competency in Washington, D.C. Most politicians, as you know, are lawyers. They get into politics. They've spent their whole life in that. They really don't understand how our globalized, financialized economy works. And they're enacting policies that are very damaging for the country longer term. So it is a critical point, and you're exactly right what you said. How a debt trap, a debt trap builds slowly, but when it finally collapses, it happens very quickly. And today we have interest costs on this $35 trillion of debt that's bigger than our Defense Department budget. It's only after Social Security, but literally within 1 year's time, it may be bigger than Social Security. The cost of that on an annual basis. So it crowds every single thing out. And then we get into a crisis mode. Look, we're probably going to enter into a crisis mode. I unfortunately think that at some point over the next 2-3 years, this debt crisis is going to hit us really hard. Politicians are going to be forced to react to it at that point in time. And if I'm successful in my Senate bid, I think I can be very helpful in talking about paths to get out of this problem, which will take a long time. But we've got to start making good, sound financial decisions to get us out of this economic mess.
So the interesting thing about what you said is I agree with you. Politicians of both parties, A, are to blame, and B, enjoy spending money because it's something to come home to and say, look at what I got you. Do you think the public, when you have this conversation with people in Wisconsin, agree with this? Because I think most people, they raise their hand. I need a new road. I want a new building. I need a courthouse. You're coming in and saying, game is over, folks. We're spending too much money. How does that play? And then secondly, I guess, what is it that you're proposing maybe before we hit this debt trap that we could be doing to maybe alleviate it, avoid it?
Look, as far as my concern, or as far as the voters are concerned, when you're talking about inflation and how it's impacting them, and they understand that the spending is the cause of it, then I think they start to realize that something needs to change. When they understand that government spending went up 40% during the lockdowns and never came back, we didn't grow our population by 40%. But, during the lockdowns, we increased spending because we shut the economy down. But then it got, reopened back up at the beginning of 21. The economy was coming back. And Joe Biden, the Democrats, just kept spending money 40% higher. So I think when people understand how inflation is created and how the debt plays a role, I think they're much more willing to say, hey, yeah, we've got to change our spending problems. And so I see a lot of people concerned about it. But it's always the push and pull of people wanting spending for their own community for whatever issue it is. How do we correct this issue? That's a much more complicated issue. First, as I like to say, if you've dug yourself a hole, what's the first thing you have to do? Stop digging. And so as far as I'm concerned, we got to pull spending back 40% to where we were prior to the COVID lockdowns. And it's not like we weren't spending a lot of money. People were already complaining of the amount we're spending. The federal government spending over $4 trillion. Now we're spending over $6 trillion. So we got to pull that back. But then we got to put a glide path over a much longer period of time to try to pull spending down. But we can't all do it with spending cuts because we'll crater the economy. So I think there's two really important things that we need to do other than pulling back spending. First is deregulation. If you recall, that was one of the hallmark of President Reagan's initiative when he came in 1981. The economy was choking on regulations. And President Reagan, which my father served in his administration, was number 2 at Housing and Urban Development. I always remember going to Washington and seeing him testify in Congress. And he slapped down 2 big books on a table as he, spoke to Congress. Each one was like, more than probably 18 inches. Thin paper, small print. And he said, this is just the regulations on housing. And he started reading regulations that went back to gaslit lamps from, the 1930s. He said, we've never cleaned up all these regulations. And yet companies have to comply with this, which drives up the cost of housing. So that was a big hallmark of the economic growth of the 80s was deregulation. We need that so desperately because however bad regulation was back in 1981, it's been amplified several fold. In fact, there was a study in 2012 that showed cost of regulation on businesses in the economy was $1.7 to $2.4 trillion. That's in 2012 numbers. So I think we need a big deregulatory push because everybody I talk to, business people, farmers, I'm in the banking industry. It's choking the banking industry. It's killing community banks. So I think we need that. And then there's another piece that we need to do. It's something that Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich did, and that's welfare reform. If you think of what happened in the 90s when Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich brought about welfare reform, that pulled a lot of Americans off the sofa back into the workforce. We have such a significant portion of our working age population, 24 to 54, that's not in our workforce today.
Right.
And what happened is we did welfare reform, but then it all crept back in a very big, massive way. And disability insurance, the SNAP program, food stamp program, other forms of welfare. So I believe we need to get people pulled back because I believe in the dignity of work. I think work is important. It helps keep people, engaged, active. It provides self-confidence. And if you can see this in the numbers, we get the jobs numbers every first Friday of a month. And, it'll give you the household survey, the jobs numbers, and it'll incorporate a participation rate. That's the percentage of Americans that are participating in our labor force. That number should be up around 66, 67%. It's at 62%. So that's over 10 million Americans in working age that are not engaged in our workforce. So, and that's a big cost on the economy. So if we get them from being a cost to being a productive person engaged in the economy, that's a wonderful thing.
But look, and again, maybe this is part of the first piece that you answered. How much do mandatory spending, like the Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, how much are they driving this, and how much is just discretionary spending? The Department of Defense, Department of Education. What if we don't look holistically at what we're spending? I get all those other pieces. I don't disagree with you at all. But I don't think that if we don't stop spending some stuff or reform real spending programs, that we're ever going to tackle the debt and the deficit.
I don't disagree with you. And we have to preserve, like Social Security. If we don't make some changes, when was the last time? I think it was in 1988, 87, when, Congress and President Reagan put some changes to Social Security to protect it for our seniors because they knew the glide path was going to be very negative, and nobody's done anything since then. So we're going to have to do things to protect Social Security for our seniors to make sure it's viable, and we're going to have to look at a whole host of different programs, and it's not just on the discretionary; it's on the entitlement side, because otherwise they won't be around. And, there's too many people that rely on them. So, look, we're going to have to look at everything, both from, a spending standpoint, as well as from an economic, growth standpoint. And that's why I talk about it. It's a two-handed approach. You can't get there all through spending cuts. And you're going to have to find ways to get better economic growth in our economy.
So if we did a poll in Wisconsin right now of voters, what would be the number one issue, do you think, of voters that you and your opponent, Tammy Baldwin, what is it that voters want to hear from you the most right now?
Very clearly, there's two things in the state of Wisconsin. One is what we were just talking about, the economy, inflation. When you look and poll the economy, jobs, and inflation all rolled up into one, that is the number one issue. I can't begin to tell you the stories I hear. I was talking to a young woman in her 20s saying, I work all the time. I work 2 jobs, and I still have to live with my parents. Everything has cost too much. There was a older woman who said, it's really sad. My adult children, one makes over $40 an hour, and they're having to eat pancakes or French toast for dinner because they can't afford protein. That's heartbreaking to hear. And inflation really hammers, as I said, middle class, working class. If you own assets, stocks, real estate.
Can I ask you a question? When you talk to that person who can't afford protein and you say to them, hi, my name's Eric. I'm a businessman. I have a solution for this. The incumbent Senator Tammy Baldwin has let you down. Do they go, okay, I'm on the team? Or how is that interaction where the sell happens, or is it, gosh, I don't know? And because to me, the thing that I find fascinating sometimes on voters is they'll tell you the problem, you give them the solution, they're like, I don't know.
Great question. Some show up already having rejected what Senator Baldwin and the left has brought on our country. Others who are just coming to listen and all the rest, they're trying to figure it out. Look, what causes and how inflation moves through a system, a lot of people have a hard time comprehending how that works.
Right.
And I get it. If you're not in the world of business and economics and all the rest, sometimes it's confusing. So, you get different reactions from different people, but everybody knows in their core something's wrong and something needs to change.
Right.
We've never seen, people, talking about the country such on a bad path as we're seeing today. So people know we need to make a change. And when you talk about the amount of debt and what we're doing to our kids and grandkids, man, does that strike home with them. Now, the second issue right after that, and very close, is the border. Every state.
And is it your northern border or is it the effects of the southern border? I was so excited. I was glad you said that because I was like, all right, I want to hear someone in Wisconsin. When you bring up this, is it your northern border in Canada or is the concern about people traipsing up from Mexico?
The southern border.
Isn't that crazy?
Every state is a border state. Every state is a border state today. Look, they dropped 1,000 people in November in a little community called Whitewater. Whitewater's 12 to 13,000 population. All of a sudden, 1,000 illegal immigrants were put into that little town, and their budget went upside down. Access to housing, healthcare collapsed. It's caused all kinds of problems. We have people pouring into our state from all over the place. A big Venezuelan community has just come into Wisconsin. But when I talk about the border, I describe it as a bad, smelly onion with multiple layers. So let's peel back those layers. The first layer is Americans are already struggling with housing costs, access to housing, and healthcare. Healthcare costs have risen dramatically, and access to healthcare has gone down. Well, now you've brought in anywhere from 10 million at a minimum, and some sheriffs on the southern border will tell you it's more like 16 million. We don't really even know because nobody's really counting it accurately. So when you do that, all you're doing is compounding your housing problems and your healthcare problems. And because what the left always forgets, there's no such thing as a free lunch. All these people are accessing healthcare. They're paying nothing into the system. That means everybody who pays into the system, their costs are only going to go higher. And you're going to see another big jump with healthcare renewal rates on, healthcare insurance is coming November and December. So you're causing massive problems there. I don't know if you recall, but in February, Denver, the healthcare system told the people of Denver, don't go to the emergency room because we're overwhelmed by the amount of illegal immigrants. So what are you going to do? You break your leg, you're having a stroke, you're having an allergic reaction, not go to the emergency room? So this is compounding that problem. So that's that layer. Then the next layer, the crime issues. We just had last Wednesday in a town in Wisconsin where a 12-year-old girl was kidnapped, bound and gagged, and was in the back of a car. Thank God when the car stopped, she broke out, ran to a house, got help, but it was a Nicaraguan illegal immigrant that crossed here a couple years ago. And we've had other crime problems. We know Venezuela's dumping their prison cells like Fidel Castro did during the Mariel boat lift into South Florida that caused problems for South Florida for almost a decade. So we've got that problem. Then let's talk about maybe one of the biggest problems our country is facing today, a very severe problem. And that is we're losing 100,000 people every year to the fentanyl crisis. It's the number one leading cause of death for 18 to 45-year-olds. And it's devastating communities. My 25-year-old daughter literally knows 5 people in her friend group, her brothers and sisters of her friend groups and people she went to college with who've died from fentanyl in the last 2 years. Now, these aren't you think, oh, these are all drug addicts. No, in most cases, they're young people that, in like one of her people she knew, took a Xanax on Christmas Eve night. It was laced with fentanyl. He never woke up. Now think of being the parents on Christmas Day to go get your child up and doesn't wake up. So this is a national crisis. The fentanyl's produced in China, sent to Mexico, finalized, and brought up over our southern border. And Washington has done nothing about it. Every year it has grown, grown, grown. President Trump tried to do something about it, and we started to see a dip. It was one of his 10 points with China that he required from China to stop the flow of fentanyl. But this administration has done absolutely nothing in opening our southern border. It's just created that problem.
So
And
what is the, what, go ahead. Sorry. No, sorry.
I was just going to say then the last stinky core of it, I have homeless shelters around the world, and I do a lot here in America through my foundation. I have these homes called Hovde homes. We rescue children out of sex trafficking, out of abandonment on the streets where they're abused, out of slavery in the case of Ghana. We have 4 in Africa, 5 in Central and South America. And I do a lot here in this country in partnership with a group called Thorn that is trying to stop sex trafficking of minors in this country. So it's sadly a topic I know far too much of. They can't account for 100,000 children that come up over our southern border. Now, President Trump was ripped for not being able to account for 4,000, and the press hammered them for that. They can't account for 100,000, and sadly, far too many of those children are probably in the sex trade. So every layer of this southern border is just a stinkier and stinkier piece of the onion. And the only ones who are benefiting are the human trafficking cartels and drug cartels. So it's been devastatingly bad, and people in Wisconsin are feeling it.
So if you're feeling all of this and the concerns are such as they are that you've outlined, what's the way that you prosecute that case to say, okay, guys, Tammy Baldwin's been in office for a long time. She's our current senator. She's not getting it done. You should elect me. What is that? I mean, what is that it? Or is there more to the pitch that needs to happen?
No, I mean, we're pointing out her votes, what she's taken, what's happened with the fentanyl crisis under her watch. It's just priceless how career politicians play this. So basically, the fentanyl crisis didn't exist when Senator Baldwin went into the Senate. And even the opiate crisis didn't exist when she went into Congress because she's been a career politician. And every year it's just risen, risen, risen. So I start talking about it, 9 months ago and really start hammering it 6 months ago. All of a sudden, Senator Baldwin is the 28th co-sponsor to a bill by Tim Scott. And now she's running 2 ads how Tammy's fighting to stop fentanyl. She has literally done nothing. In fact, she's done everything to open our southern border. She took votes to block trying to close our southern border, took votes to help open it, has been supportive of President Biden on that issue. And now that it's blowing up in her face, she's trying to position in a totally different direction. She actually ran an ad in our state talking about how she worked with President Trump. Now, it's just priceless.
I do find it fascinating when you look at Wisconsin. You go Tammy Baldwin, the first openly LGBTQ person, I think, to run for either the House or the Senate, or a female, who's a far left, self-proclaimed progressive. And then you got Ron Johnson. And I'm like, what? It's almost like Wisconsin's bipolar. We really want a conservative businessman that's pragmatic, that's looking at stuff. And then we want this crazy leftist.
We are a true purple state. I think you're going to have a hard time finding 2 senators that are more different. Look, our every election is, 52, 48, 51, 49, or even closer. President Trump lost our state by 20,000 votes in 2020 with 3 million people voting. But in saying that, there were 60,000 voters that didn't vote for President Trump, but voted for a Republican congressman, state senator, or assembly person. So we're a center-right state, but we go back and
So
forth.
what is it that you're missing right now? I get it. You're a first timer. I mean, I know you've played around before, well-known businessman, successful businessman. What is it that you need right now? President Trump, that race is dead even, right? For presidential. You're slightly below Baldwin right now. Obviously, she benefits from incumbency and years in office. What is it that you need? Is it a better ground game? Is it more money? Like, what is it that's going to put you over the top?
Look, money matters. There's no question about it. I'm making a big investment and I need everybody's help. But if somebody told me I'd be basically tied with her or a point down, depending on which internal polls we're looking at, I at this point, I mean, I've been in the race for 3 months. She has never gotten above 50, which is terrible for a career politician who's been in there, a sitting senator of 2 terms and a congressperson of 16 years.
Right.
So her numbers are very troublesome for her. Look, I think there's some things that are playing out. And what do I need to do? Just constantly get the message out. And run, I've been moving all over the state. I've been up with ads right from the get-go. I don't have a primary, which is very important because when Republicans tend to lose, our primary is very late. We go through this bloody primary. It ends in the second week of August, and then Democrats just pour a lot of money on you. So I've been able to launch a general election campaign against her from day one, and talking to the voters on every issue that matters to them. The economy, I'm in the right position. On the border, I'm in the right position. On that, on crime, I'm in the right position. On healthcare, which I'm talking about, I'm in the right position. And I'm even in the right position on abortion, where most people stand. So it's getting the message out. But I feel really good about where things stand, Sean.
Right.
What you will know this because if you're in a close race, the whole election is going to be decided by 5-6% of true independents. And if the economy is going well, those independents will ultimately break for the incumbent.
Right.
But if the economy is not going well and people don't think the country's on the right track, they tend to break for the challenger. You have not seen such terrible polling on people thinking the country's on the wrong track, and well over half of Americans feel that the economy's already in recession. So I really like where I'm positioned. They're spending ungodly amounts of money on me. You'll get a chuckle out of this. In politics, you have them scared when they're attacking you. So I got a text 2 months ago from Senator Daines, who runs the NRSCs, the senator from Montana. And he said, first thing in the morning, congratulations, Eric, you're over the target. You're the first Republican Senate candidate that Chuck Schumer is spending money on. And man, they have spent money. They've spent more money on me than any of the other 11 Republican Senate candidates. That tells you how concerned they are. And so if I can win this race, and talking to everybody out there listening, not only do you pull this from one of the most extreme progressive liberals over to a conservative business person who understands how our economy works and is not going to be bought off by the system, but it will change not only the makeup of the Senate for the next 2 years, but potentially the next 4 or 6 years.
Yeah. Look, I God bless Ron Johnson. I think another successful businessman like you. And I think that the thing that I like about your background is you got real estate, you got banking, you got all of those elements that we need right now to tackle the debt, to address the regulatory problems that we have, all the stuff that you talked about. But it's that secret sauce that I think we need more of in Washington. So I mean, to me, that you're exactly what we need at this time. The last thing I want to ask you before I let you go is about voting. I know this has been an issue in Wisconsin. It's something that you addressed previously. What has been done since the last election to make sure, frankly, that Wisconsin follows the law?
Look, there's been some good things done, but there's still more things that need to be done. So let me talk about some of the good things that have been done. First, Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, Zuckerbuck, spent a lot of money in Wisconsin in the 2020 election, where he would put money into liberal cities, working with the cities to drive out Democrat voters. That got put to a referendum. That has now been banned in the state of Wisconsin.
Thank
So
God.
Zuckerberg or private companies can no longer coordinate with municipalities to drive out just, one set of voters. So that's a big win. Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty, a conservative legal group, has won several important cases that will make it harder for questionable practices to occur. Third, we're not only recruiting poll watchers, but the Republican Party's done a good job of recruiting poll workers.
Okay.
And if you're involved in the process of working in the polls, it's harder to engage in nefarious activities. Now, are there other things that could be done to tighten up the process? Absolutely. Is it a concern that I have? Of course I do. But at least we've seen a lot of movement in a positive direction, and there's a lot bigger spotlight on this issue. So if somebody's going to try to engage in it, questionable election practices, it's going to be much harder to accomplish in Wisconsin this time around.
All right, that makes me feel much better because I know, talking to a lot of the folks there, Wisconsin didn't even follow its own law. Now the Supreme Court there, I know, is reviewing its own findings. Eric, I wish you the best of luck. Like I said, we need more people like you in Washington. And I have told this to the listeners over and over again, that having a Republican Senate is crucial to making sure President Trump gets his nominees through. So getting you over the finish line is important to Wisconsin. It's important to the country in terms of the issues that you're championing, but it's also important to President Trump and his agenda. So I hope you check back in between now and the election. I wish you the best of luck. I hope people go. Tell us where we can find you online if we want to help you out.
Eric Hovde, H-O-V-D-E. That's a V behind my head. H-O-V-D-E, EricHovde.com. I really appreciate any and everybody's help. It's so crucial to our great country. Thank you. Thank you, Sean. It was wonderful being on your show, and I will definitely be back.
Okay. Well, I know you guys got a lot headed on. The convention is headed your way. So I'm sure you're going to be very, very busy in the next few months. Hopefully you suck up all of that energy and excitement and talent and get people, stand out there and get them to give you money as they try to get in line to get into the convention hall there in downtown Milwaukee. Eric, all the best of luck. Thank you for being with us. Folks, continue to subscribe. Tomorrow, Chicks on the Right are going to be here. And as I said earlier, Friday, a breakdown of President Trump's trial like you've never seen from a law professor at Yale. That's not heard of. Anyway, continue to subscribe. Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Thanks for being with us. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.